In November, Anne-Marie Trevelyan quit the government over Theresa May's Brexit deal. And in her resignation letter, she raised concerns about the Irish backstop and also the fishing industry. And we're pleased to say that she joins us now. Thank you very much for being with us. So has the Christmas break made you change your mind?
I'm afraid it hasn't, no. There's been no change to the withdrawal agreement documentation or indeed to the political declaration documentation, so my view still stands at the moment. It just isn't something that, as a Brexiteer and someone who believes that we must respect the will of the people through that referendum order that we were given, this doesn't do that.
As someone who's quite plugged into the Conservative benches, do you have any indication that people are changing their minds?
No, not really. It's been really interesting, actually. We've all, chat over Christmas and, keep trying to get our heads around it. We all of us want to leave on the 29th of March with a deal, or the framework for sorting out the logistics over a transition period, if we possibly can.
So a no deal is not something you'd like to see?
Well, I'd rather not, but I'm also very focused on making sure that preparedness is actually in place. That's been one of the challenges I've been pushing the Prime Minister for a while now, both publicly and privately, to say, are you sure that everything's in place? Because the challenge I get coming back from my constituents, be it the fishing community, as you mentioned, the farming community, small businesses. My constituency has no big Jaguar Land Rover companies. It has lots of small businesses, some of whom trade with the EU. The question is it ready? And they're saying to me, well, we don't know, it's all I know. So no deal's just really scary. But actually, and as some of the civil service articles written recently have shown, the civil service, best in the world, ours, is preparing. I think the challenge we've got is that the Prime Minister has been slow to make sure that businesses know, to try and reduce that fear and anxiety, knowing that, much like the millennium bug crisis, you probably weren't, old enough to remember, but I do, the world was going to end, everything was going to stop.
Get you anywhere.
I try. But the reality is that, the civil service is prepared, and all that can be put in place will be, and businesses need to know that. So I think that's a critical part of, once we get through this week's, noise and fireworks, to actually make sure that businesses do know what's what if they are having EU relationships now.
At the same time, though, you're somebody who backed Brexit. We just heard from Chris Grayling, the Transport Secretary, who made the point that if you don't back the Prime Minister's deal, then there is a concern among many people who supported leave that Brexit might not happen, or it will be much, much softer than you would like it to be. I mean, is that not something that you're concerned about?
So the reality is that the statute in place at the moment is to leave on the 29th of March, either with an agreed deal, which is what the Prime Minister has been negotiating, or if one can't be reached by then, on a no-deal basis, and then we continue the conversation afterwards. But we will have stepped away from all those EU connections. There's a lot in the withdrawal agreement that's fine. It's like a basket of all the legacy stuff wrapped up in one. So it's much easier if we can do it, in a one big glue. But some of it's just not acceptable because it won't deliver Brexit.
But at the same time, though, if you look at the papers today, there's lots of stories in the Sunday Times, for example, amongst others, about MPs who are absolutely opposed to the idea of a no-deal Brexit, talking about bringing new legislation to stop it happening.
Well, that is a great challenge, and some of the, the activity we've seen this week in Parliament with, trying to so dramatically change how Parliament works that everything becomes completely unstable is indeed, as the Prime Minister herself, into unprecedented and uncharted territory. But that must not stop us from remembering that we gave the people a referendum. Now, it's a fairly blunt tool. I don't think any of us would disagree with that. But having done so, if we don't respect the result that they sent back to us, which is an order, it's not a nice idea for us to now continue to discuss. It was a very clear order. We must make sure that we actually leave the EU, and the withdrawal agreement as it stands will not do that because of the Irish backstop. So that needs to be something that the Prime Minister goes back to the EU and says, I'm afraid, Parliament says this isn't acceptable. This is the area of concern. Please can we fix it? We've got, nearly 3 months to do that, for them to decide. This isn't for the Prime Minister. It's not under her control. I think that's the frustration. It's all being kind of dumped on her head. Actually, the EU have to decide whether they are OK with a no-deal position on the 29th of March, or whether they would rather make some amendments now so that that bulk of the withdrawal agreement, which is absolutely fine, can be put through.
OK. I'm interested to talk to you a little bit about the future of the Conservative Party as well, because it's been a really bruising couple of years for your party. I mean, you've been fighting like cats and dogs there, to be blunt. You've spoken before about worries about young voters being switched off from the Conservatives, and even saying that your own son might not vote for you.
Well, no one ever let me finish that sentence.
Go on then, I'll let you finish it. Are you still worried that he might not vote for you?
Well, I think probably he would. He can now vote. The problem at the time was he was a few days off being able to vote in the 2017 election. The finish of that sentence was, because I'm probably not right-wing enough for him.
Oh, interesting.
But of course that wasn't chosen. But it's a really controversial. There are an extraordinary number of incredibly focused young people interested in politics. I think the challenge they've had is to try to get to grips with. They're arriving into politics at this monumental point, and at this point where we're using a tool that is, used very, very rarely, perhaps just as well, the referendum, and trying to understand what it means. So if having used a referendum, which is a direct order rather than normal politics, which is you elect your MP and then you let them, make their judgment, and if you don't like the way they make judgments, you chuck them out the next time round. The referendum's something else. So they're caught in this, trying to understand what normal politics might look like alongside this dramatic and indeed huge
but also
question.
The Conservative Party itself does not look good at the minute, does it?
Well, I think all parties are on a state of huge flux. The Labour Party is equally, split in the way, it's trying to find how it goes forwards with a very hard left core sitting on the front bench, and all those who have been, if you like, the wisdom and the experience of the Labour Party for the last 30 years sitting behind them on the backbenches. I think that's in both cases, and maybe it reflects the fact that this is having a referendum generates huge political energy, and we must make sure that we harness it carefully and that it goes forwards so that our country can do as well as it can.
OK, thank you very much.